Are you seeking fulfillment for your life? Do you want freedom from fear? That's why we're here. Welcome to Jesus 101, introducing you to the real Jesus. And now, here's your host, Elizabeth Talbot.
Welcome to our Jesus 101 series, Chosen, Trusting God's Purpose for My Life. Today, we are seeing one of the stories that actually changed history. But before we get there, I want to tell you a story that happened here in September 11, a big date for those of us who live here in the United States. There was a crew filming the fire department of New York, and they had no idea what was going to happen that fateful day of 9/11. So they were following the firemen here and there, and they were in the middle of Manhattan when they hear an airplane in a zone that is not supposed to be any airplane. So the cameraman, and I highly recommend this documentary because it's something out of this world, because obviously they didn't know what was going to happen that day. So the cameraman looks at this plane, follows the plane, and follows the plane all the way to the tower, and the plane hits the tower. Well, from there on, as you can imagine, the whole thing changed, and the movie went crazy. And one of the cameramen went to the firehouse, the other cameraman followed them to the towers, and all kinds of things happened that went up. I mean, I'm not going to tell you the documentary. Hopefully someday you can see it. It's amazing. It's all from the inside of the towers. But one of the cameramen went back to the firehouse, and he captured a moment there that I want to start this program with that moment. An old man comes in, and he goes to a locker and gets his hat. And so the cameraman says, "Who are you?" He says, "Well, I am the retired fire chief of this unit." He says, "And I was home when I saw what just happened." He says, "And I could not stay home because I have trained all my life for this moment." And he put his hat on, and he said, "This is my city, this is my people, and this is my purpose." I was so touched by this man that could not stay home. It was just, he had trained all his life for a moment, for such a time as this. And even though he was retired, he couldn't stay there. Well, today we're going to go through a story that uses similar words. And then we're going to understand a little more about Jesus, why he came. And so I am hoping that today's story will help you find your own purpose for your own life, because God has a purpose for all of us. And once again, we welcome Pastor Mike Tucker.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you for being here. And thank you for your smile, for your insights, for everything you do here in the show. We really appreciate it.
It is an honor to be here, as you know.
Yeah, well, we love to study the scriptures together. We have fun doing it. At the same time, we learn a lot. So thank you so much for being here. And, you know, before we do Esther, there's so many people confused about their purpose and their calling versus their salvation.
Yeah.
That I said, you know, let's give a framework so that nobody gets confused, that we're not working for God in order to gain our salvation. We work because we have the assurance of our salvation. And so Ephesians is one of those chapters that gives us, those books that gives us that framework.
Yeah, in fact, this was a very formative passage that we're going to look at in my own conversion. I grew up in the church, but was not converted because I really had not found the gospel.
Wow.
But Ephesians 2, 8 through 10 was very important in that process. This is, "For by grace have you been saved through faith, and that not of yourself. It is the gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one may boast."
Okay, well, let's stop there for a moment. So the first thing that he does is to set up the foundation of how we're saved.
Yeah.
We're saved by grace. Through faith. And even the fact that we can have a little faith to grasp this, even that is
That
not
doesn't
ours.
come from you. You don't have the ability to have that faith, but he gives that to you.
Yeah, so even the faith to grasp the grace
Right.
is a gift from God,
It's a
not
gift from
from
God.
works, so that no one may boast. So we got that down. So
Yeah.
then verse 10 comes up.
For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand so that we should walk in them.
Okay, so everybody that understands that they're saved only by grace, they grasp this by faith, then God says, ta-da! I have a purpose for you that I designed ahead of time so that if you accepted the gospel and had the woohoo of the gospel in you, now you can do this work for me.
And he's the one who does that in you. He performs it. If I remember correctly, and I haven't looked this up recently, that workmanship comes from the Greek word poema, which means his poem. He is writing the story of your life. He's writing poetry in your life, but he's the author.
He's like
he's
a
the poet.
symphony. He's like...
He's directing, he's doing it, and you're just allowing him to live that purpose out in your life.
Exactly. So the purpose is an overflow of you accepting salvation by grace. So you should never
I don't get salvation because I'm his workmanship.
Exactly.
I'm
or
his
because of...
yeah.
Exactly.
I'm his workmanship because he has redeemed me. And that's the only thing that changes me is his love.
Yeah.
It's not my willpower, it's not my
or fear,
dogged determination or my fear or my decision to be saved.
No.
It is his grace in me and his love that changes me.
And when I accept that, then I find
then everything changes.
Everything. I find the assurance of salvation, and then I have a purpose for my life.
Right.
And all of us are looking for a purpose in our lives. And today we're going to study, we have called this program The Purposeful Woman, because this is a girl, a young girl that finds that God had quite a purpose for her, more than she imagined. And she didn't realize that she had been preparing for this all her life, you know, like this fire chief had been prepared. Who could have imagined a day like 9/11?
Right.
All right. Well, she gets her own 9/11 in a different way, where a whole race is going to be exterminated if she doesn't do something about it. And God had her exactly in the right time, in the right place. So we're going to study the book of Esther. So go to the book of Esther. And let me say something before we start. A lot of people are very confused about the timing of these events because of the place where the book of Esther is in the Bible.
Appears in the canon of Scripture.
Yes, because, you know, the canon of Scripture has, you know, the law, then the historic books, then poetic books, prophetic books. Esther actually is happening at the end of the Old Testament. Okay, so don't let the place where it's in the canon fool you, because these events are taking place around 460 BC, and it will be the last attempt of the devil to exterminate the race through which the Messiah is to come. Okay,
and
so
if he can accomplish this,
the Messiah,
then what happens?
Exactly. Yeah. So many times during the Bible times, the devil, Satan, the adversary, will try to exterminate this race through which the Messiah is to come. So the first question that we're going to ask is, who can God use for moments like this? You know, and we're going to find this girl that had all kinds of things going against her.
Yeah.
So if you ever wonder, can God use me? Have you ever wondered that?
Oh, absolutely. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not amazed by the fact that he chooses to use me. I'm a broken vessel. I'm a broken instrument, and yet he's chosen somehow to put me in a position to be used by his glory. You know, I don't understand that. Yeah,
it's an amazing thing, because I have the same feeling. And I think God uses, to use a phrase that is used a lot, wounded healers. All of us that know we're vessels of clay, that we don't deserve the treasure of the gospel, but that has been given to us. And you can never take credit for absolutely nothing, because you know it's all him.
Yeah. The other thing is that there are times when I've seen young pastors who have great talent, but the problem is they know they have great talent, and they're resting on that talent. And I've confided to other people who know this young man well, that what this individual needs is a little brokenness in their life.
Yes.
Then God will use that talent in a glorious way.
And you know, God will always give all of us the opportunity to go through brokenness.
Yes.
Because that's where we are broken and we have nothing left, and we realize that the only thing we really need is God.
It's only after you're broken that you can really minister.
Isn't it amazing?
It is. I don't understand it.
We would all like to not have to go through pain, but pain has a way of getting you closer to God.
That's right.
So we're going to go through this story, and if you ever wonder, can God use me? I am divorced, I've been to jail, I've done this or I've done that. Hey, I'm hoping that these questions are going to be answered today for good.
For good.
And because this little girl, that her name is actually Hadassah. We get to know her as Esther later on, had a lot of things going against her. And so Mike is going to help me by reading some of these things, starting on verse 5 of chapter 2 of the book of Esther.
How far you want me to go?
Well, just one by one.
Okay, all right.
Verse 5.
Now there was in the citadel of Susa a Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite.
Okay, so he's in the citadel of Susa, so they're not home. They're not back in Israel. They're in a place that is not theirs.
They're living in exile.
Uh-huh.
Who had been taken captive into exile from Jerusalem with the captives who had been exiled with Jeconiah, the king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had exiled.
Okay, and he was doing what? Then this is where we're going to start. He was bringing up who?
Hadassah,
See,
that is Esther.
Okay, so we're going to start with this. I'm going to wear a trash bag for everything that is going against Esther. You know, when you say, well, if God has for me a purpose, he wouldn't use me because of this and that. So the first thing you have here is a little girl, it's a young woman, who is a foreigner. Mm-hmm. You know, she has an accent.
Seriously, an accent. Do you know of anyone who speaks in a foreign land with an accent?
You know what is so funny? That when Mike called me almost 8 years ago now to be on radio with him, I don't know if you remember this. I remember where I was sitting. I remember everything about it. And I know this is going to make a lot of noise, but you're just going to have to live with it. So, not you, I mean the audience. So, I said to him, do you know who you're calling? I said, I'm Elizabeth Talbot. I have an accent. And he goes, well, we know you have an accent. That's not why we're calling you. He says, we think God is asking us to call you to help us on the radio, explain the scriptures. And that's how our career in media, my career in media started. And I will always be thankful for that. So this girl is a foreigner. She has an accent. Probably the color of her skin is different. So she looks different. So can God use people that are not from there? So that's the first question. Well, she's a foreigner. Let's keep reading.
So speaking of Mordecai, he was bringing up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had no father or mother. So this is an orphan.
So on top of the fact that she's a foreigner, she has an accent. She has a different color of skin, and this is not her culture. On top of that, I'm trying to keep the mic from being covered here.
Yeah, the sound men are going crazy.
Yeah.
They don't like you right
okay.
now. They don't like you.
So on top of that, she's an orphan. She doesn't have, you know, sometimes you ask, well, I've been abused when I was a kid, or I've been divorced, or there's no way God has a big purpose for me in my life. And Hadassah, who will later be known as Esther because of the goddess Ishtar, and it means star too, she says, really? Let me tell you my story. Foreigner, orphan, but that's not all. Keep reading.
The young lady was beautiful of form and face. When her father and her mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. So it came about when the command and decree of the king were heard, and many young ladies were gathered to the citadel of Susa to the custody of Hegai, that Esther was taken into the king's palace, into the custody of Hegai.
Okay, let's stop there. She was taken. I hope you understood that. Because, see, a lot of people think Esther is like a beauty pageant that Esther said, well, what can I do with my life today? I know.
I'll enter a beauty pageant.
Yes. She was taken against her will. This is a Jewish girl that would have never chosen to go to sleep with a king that is not of her culture for one night.
Or anyone to whom she was not married.
Yeah. This is a girl that was religious. She had her culture, her religion. She is taken. So she's taken by force. She's taken by force. And it's very important because she already has all these things going against her, but she's going to be taken by force. And on top of that, read verse 10, please.
Verse 10, Esther did not make known her people or her kindred, for Mordecai had instructed her that she should not make them known.
Okay, so on top of that, she's hiding. I don't know if you ever had to hide. You know, I'm Hispanic background, and I know a lot of people that live their lives afraid that immigration will come and find them, and so they live their lives hiding. Nobody knows their name or their social security number or working behind the scenes. Esther was like that. She didn't tell anybody she was Jewish. She didn't tell anybody her name. So not only is she a foreigner, an orphan, taken by force, but she's hiding. Nobody knows who she is. And let's do one more because most people don't realize that this girl was trapped for life. Verse 14 tells us what would happen if that one night she would get with the king, if the king didn't choose her as queen, what would happen to her? Verse 14 of the same chapter.
In the evening she would go in, and in the morning she would return to the second harem, to the custody of Shazgaz, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the concubines.
Yeah, see, most people don't know there was a second house. The second house is for those who were not chosen.
Yeah.
It's not that she would be now free to go home. No, she would stay for life. She's trapped for life. She's not chosen queen. So here we have a girl that is a foreigner. She is an orphan. She's taken by force. She's hiding, and she's trapped.
Mm-hmm.
Can God use somebody like that?
Yeah. And you know what? This whole thing about the harem and all is not all that foreign. I was just in Dubai not long ago. There is a palace for the Shah's harem still there, and girls still living in it.
Wow.
It still happens today.
Wow.
It still happens.
Well, Esther's story, she could have looked at her trash bag and say, what? God is going to use me here? Mm-hmm. And God says, you know what? Put your belt on, because this is the dress that you need for the plan I had for you. This didn't just happen, Esther. This is something I chose for you because I needed somebody exactly like you at this time for such a time as this. So even though she's full of all of these things, God says, perfect. You look perfect for what I have chosen for you. And as you know, she becomes queen. And we would have thought that her story ends here. Oh, wow. You know, Esther puts let's see, how does my crown look?
It's lovely.
Okay.
Lovely.
So Esther is now queen, but she's wearing all of this. Nobody knows this. But God knows, because God has prepared her and you for a very special purpose. So the actual book of Esther, what's happening with Esther, starts on the next chapter. When we realize that God doesn't make mistakes.
No, he doesn't. He's put Esther there for one particular purpose.
And this is so, I'm so thankful for this trash bags. Because if I didn't have characters in the Bible, like David, like Esther, like Moses, who had a past, who had a history, I would question my calling.
But you look at every significant figure in the Bible, all of them have got baggage they carry with them.
But that's exactly what I mean.
Because anyone used by God has got baggage, and that means that God doesn't use anybody without baggage. If you got baggage, he's going to use you.
Well, who doesn't have baggage?
Exactly.
I mean, this is humankind.
But the problem is, I think my baggage is worse than yours, so basically God can't use me, right? That's wrong.
Yeah. Or maybe I'm so proud that I'm not even aware of my baggage.
Yeah.
I'm going, hey, look at Mike. Who could think that God could use Mike?
Yeah.
In the moment that I think like that, it's because I'm completely unaware.
Yeah.
And God says, I'm sorry, I can't use you because you have no idea what it takes.
He cannot use you until you're aware of your own baggage.
Exactly. Well, I'm so glad, I love doing these programs with Mike because we see eye to eye on this. Even though he's much older than I am, we have the same view.
But I'm much wiser, so respect your elders and be nice to me.
There you go. Yeah, okay, that's fine. I had that one coming.
Yeah.
So anyways, chapter 3, we get a plot. And the plot is, verse 1 says that Haman was an Agagite. This is a very, very important thing because, the Amalekites were the arch enemy of Israel back from Exodus. I mean, if you want to see the first fight they ever had to fight outside of their own people, was the Amalekites back in Exodus 17. The king of the Amalekites, his name was Agag. And in 1 Samuel 15, verse 20, God says, you have to take out this people. King Saul doesn't want to kill him. So we have a descendant of royal blood from the Amalekites, who's Haman the Agagite. So you're told immediately that he's royal blood.
Yeah.
He decides to continue what they started in Exodus. We're going to exterminate these people. So that's when you realize the plot.
Yeah. The plot. And of course, his plot is that he wants to get rid of them, so he asks for a law to be made.
Yes. And the law is they're going to exterminate. And, poor king, I can't say the name of the king. Ahasuerus, verse 8.
Yeah, that's good. Ahasuerus, yeah.
That's a weird thing.
Yeah.
Is that how you say it?
That'd be how I said it.
From Texan.
Yeah,
because
Texan.
From Hebrew, I don't think that's the way. Well, whatever the king's name is on verse 8 of chapter 3, he doesn't realize what Haman is after. So he says, well, why don't you sign here and there? I'm going to put some money for this and that. And these people have different rules. They don't follow what you're saying. We have to exterminate these people.
Yeah.
And he puts his ring. He doesn't even realize what's happening. And so chapter 4 is where the crown becomes the 911 fire chief hat, because that's when Esther realizes why
she puts on her helmet. She says, this is my time. These are my people.
This is my purpose.
This is my purpose.
But she's afraid at the beginning. So Mordecai sends a message to her, hey, you got to do something, you know? And she says, but I can't do anything. Chapter 4, verse 11, the first thing she has is fear. And all of us that have a purpose at some point have to choose faith over fear, because there's reasons to be afraid.
Reasons to be afraid. And fear at times is a sign of intelligence.
Yes, that's true.
You realize what's going on. And so this is a bright girl. She realizes what the risks are.
Exactly. And verse 11 says what those risks are.
It says, and the king's servants and all the people of the king's provinces know that if for any man or woman who comes to the king in the inner court who is not summoned, he has but one law, he shall be put to death, unless the king holds out to him the golden scepter so that he may live.
So Esther says, there's no way, I haven't been called, I haven't seen him in a while. So Mordecai says something to her, verse 13 and 14, and this is a very known passage, verses 13 and 14.
Then Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, do not imagine that you in the king's palace can escape any more than all the Jews. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise from the Jews from another place, and you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not attained royalty for such a time as this.
See, Mordecai says, look, you are not wearing a crown because you're in a beauty pageant. God allowed all these things, gave you a belt, gave you a crown, so that right now, in this moment, when the Jews are about to be exterminated, you have come to royalty for such a time as this. Right. And so she has to make a decision, and all of us at some point have to make the decision, will we follow God's purpose for our life or not, you know?
And following God's purpose for your life is not always an easy thing.
No, it's very unexpected.
Sacrifice.
It's very unexpected sometimes. Sometimes it's like, wow, I don't qualify. And the truth is we don't. And he qualifies those who he calls. It's not the other way around.
He's never called a person who was qualified, but he's never failed to qualify a person he's called.
I love that. So at this point, she makes a decision. She says, go pray, everybody pray, and I and my maidens will pray too. And then she says in verse 16, I will go into the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish,
I perish.
I perish. There's a time in which you have to put your
fireman's helmet on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can put this on.
That is so lovely.
On top of your crown, because you have a purpose. You have a place in this life for a reason, and it's because God had a purpose for you. And in this case, God will use a girl to save a race. That through which the Messiah was to come.
He used a broken woman.
Very much with all this.
With all the baggage she's carrying, a secret, and he uses her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something that a lot of people don't know is that this particular phrase, for such a time as this, for such an hour as this, will become the basis of the structure of the Gospel of John. You know, in the Gospel of John, the cross has a name, and the name is the hour. So from chapter 2 on...
His hour has not yet come.
Exactly. Jesus says, my hour is not yet here, my hour has not yet come, my hour is not here. As a matter of fact, in a couple of places, he uses the exact wording. And but Jesus didn't just die because it was an accident.
There was a plan.
There was a plan and there was an hour, and the hour is called the cross. And so a lot of people say, yeah, but Jesus, was just killed because of the Jews. No, there was a plan of salvation, and he came for such a time as this. As a matter of fact, there's one I have to show you, because there's many, because the gospel is structured with, no, my time is not here, my time is coming, my time has come, etc. But it's chapter 12, verse 27, that I want you to see how he knew he had a purpose, he knew he had an hour, and he also had to fight fear because he could be afraid, but he submitted to the plan and the purpose.
Verse 27, now my soul has become troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour. But for this purpose I came to this hour.
See, Jesus was very, very clear that there was that his hour was to save the world. That's not our hour. Yeah, we have been saved. God is calling you for something else, is to talk about the gospel in such a time as this. You know, the end of the world hopefully is soon. We're expecting Jesus to come soon. There's all kinds of threats around us. People are fearful. And God says, but you know the gospel. You know the good news. You know, the Queen Esther, this little young girl, had to put the 911 hat on, the fire chief, and say, this is my purpose. This is my people. You know, and Jesus did the same. He died on the cross. He says, this is my purpose. This is my hour. This is my people. Now God is asking you to, hey, tell your friends, tell your family, stand up. Even if people are saying, no, with all those trash bags, there's no way God could use you. Saying, you know what? He
uses people with trash bags. He uses broken people. He uses people you would never dream he could ever use. That's what God does.
What an encouraging topic, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I'm going to go back to the cross. Thanks for being here with us always. And you know, I love the fact that that the Gospel of John has been written with this particular thing in mind. The hour is the name of the cross in the Gospel of John. Jesus would come to his hour. Of course, the book of Revelation shows that he's the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and we get the whole cosmic view. But in the Gospel of John, we just know that he came for 1 hour. For one time, he lived a perfect life in our place, and he died a perfect death in our place. He put the 911 hat and said, this is my people, this is my purpose, this is my hour. And he died for us. So stop trying to gain your salvation. Don't be motivated by fear. Maybe I'm not good enough. Hey, I have bad news. None of us is good enough. Now I have great news. He was good enough. So you can just stop that striving of saying, okay, how can I be saved? No, just rest, breathe. You have been saved. Now give your life to God. Let him take your trash bags, put the belt on, the crown on, and give you a purpose for your life, which he prepared way ahead of time. So that if you accepted Christ, I love this. He said, hey, you're saved by grace. You can grasp this only by faith. And that faith that it takes to grasp it, you don't even have it. So I'm going to give it to you as a gift. So now that you know you're saved, guess what? You're my workmanship. I have prepared ahead of time these things for you to walk on, this purpose for your life. You're not an accident. Your parents might have told you you were an accident. Maybe you're a foreigner. Maybe you have an accent. Maybe you went to jail. Maybe you were an orphan. Maybe you were abused. I don't know what your circumstances are or were. All I know is that God has chosen you for such a time as this. And you can trust him. Because after all, he went to the cross and had his hour and died for you so that you now can live with assurance of salvation and a purpose-driven life. Isn't that good news? Thank you for joining us for this series.